last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. Truly, truly special people because he is a Harvard researcher and a doctor at the cutting edge of fibromyalgia and immune system disorders. No other than Dr. Bruce Gillis. Welcome to Book 101, Mr. Bruce. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I missed?
Certainly. Um, I am a physician. I attended the University of Illinois College of Medicine, was able to complete the basic training in only 3 years, went on, and my senior year was spent at the Harvard School of Public Health, where I received a master's in public health. I then stayed on at Harvard and did a medical residency and a medical fellowship. Then went to UCLA, did another medical residency and fellowship, was recruited to join the faculty at UCLA's School of Public Health and School of Medicine, and subsequently entered related fields. My specialty initially was in an area called epidemiology, the study of diseases and what causes those diseases and why they affect people as they do. I also got involved in areas of environmental health. I ran the company that oversaw the environmental issues of the Alaskan oil spill a few decades ago, worked on other projects, worked on issues concerning the building of the first stealth fighter airplane, worked on the space shuttle, worked on a number of other interesting subjects. And ultimately, while a clinical professor at the University of Illinois College of Medicine, entered the field of immune science research. The first subject was that of fibromyalgia, a disease at that time which causes people to have brain fog, generalized pain, mental depression, fatigue, anxiety, poor sleep, gastrointestinal disturbances such as of an irritable bowel syndrome. And with colleagues at the University of Illinois College of Medicine, Department of Pathology, we developed what was the first and remains the only diagnostic, objective, and accurate blood test capable of diagnosing fibromyalgia, a disease that affects approximately 20 million Americans and hundreds of millions of people on a worldwide basis. We also, as a result of continuing research, ultimately found why the disease happens. We discovered the unique DNA genomic signatures that 100% of fibromyalgia blood test patients possess, which explains why they are afflicted. And we also worked on a compound that targets the immune system deficiencies in this disease in order to lessen and in many cases eliminate the symptoms of this particular disease. Further research grew in reference to other immune deficiency diseases. We did research identifying abnormalities that happen in nearly 9 out of 10 people with long COVID, and recently completed research with specialists at the Stanford School of Medicine, Department of Urology, identifying a diagnostic blood test for a disease that for years has not been able to be objectively defined. We have broken that barrier, and that's the disease of interstitial cystitis, also called painful bladder syndrome, where people suffer with severe pelvic area pain and a need to urinate very frequently, sometimes as often as every 15 minutes. So those are some of the areas of work that I have done as a medical researcher and as a physician.
Dr. Bruce Gillis, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. Hoping for more and more empowering breakthrough to come. How would you explain fibromyalgia to someone who's never heard it before, like me?
Okay, well, you've probably heard of chronic pain, right?
Yes.
approximately 40 to 50% of medical office visits involve people complaining of pain, chronic pain. Chronic pain is able to be classified in various ways. One is the subject of fibromyalgia, where chronic pain is affiliated with brain fog, where you have trouble with clear thinking or with memory lapses. It also relates to severe fatigue, lack of energy. People suffer with depression. People suffer with chronic anxiety. They have poor sleep. They experience gastrointestinal problems. Could be pain. It could be cramps. It could be diarrhea alternating with constipation. These are common afflictions in various patients. And for years, it was misdescribed as a syndrome, nothing more than a collection of symptoms, all subjective presentations. But it really isn't that. It's an actual medical disease. And in the research that we conducted at the University of Illinois College of Medicine, we were able to document that these patients have a defective type of white blood cell in their immune system. This cell is called the peripheral blood mononuclear cell. And these cells are incapable of producing normal quantities of 4 very important proteins. And due to these protein deficiencies or immune system deficiencies, people develop these symptoms. What we've also come to discover by doing DNA analysis of hundreds of patients, those with fibromyalgia and those healthy matched controls, was that 100% of these fibromyalgia patients, detectable through the fibromyalgia blood test, have unique DNA. These are called DNA genomic signatures. So they all have it. And as a result, they remain symptomatic. Now, obviously, there's no way to change your DNA. For example, if you have brown eyes, I can't give you blue eyes. I assume you understand that. So I worked on methods to try and reverse these pathways and ultimately identified certain non-pathogenic bacteria that you can find in water and soil, which when working with these defective white blood cells can cause those white blood cells to change their behaviors and start producing higher quantities of those deficient proteins. And as a result, the patients start seeing a reduction and or an elimination in their symptoms. The blood test is currently called the Fibro Test, www.thefibrotest.com. And fortunately, most insurance companies recognize this test and will pay for this test. In an analysis that we did with a group at the Mayo Clinic, their fibromyalgia clinic, we were able to, again, prove the accuracy of this blood test. And we also did so with one of the world's most important rheumatologists, Professor Daniel Wallace at UCLA, who also identified the accuracy of the biomarkers that lead to the diagnosis of fibromyalgia. So we know that we've been able to unequivocally and objectively prove the disease exists, identify the pathways that explain why the disease happens, understand the DNA of the disease, and obviously now approach this so that we can make the lives and well-being of patients with this disease much better. So that's part of what I have been doing. And what we've also done, interestingly, is in the last few years, in the understanding of long COVID, a number of medical researchers said that the symptoms in long COVID mirror the symptoms of fibromyalgia. So in a study that was conducted at the University of Illinois College of Medicine, we identified the fact that nearly 9 out of 10, approximately 86% of people with long COVID also have the same test parameters and immune system deficiencies as patients with fibromyalgia, which means that we now have a better understanding of this disorder, and we are about to start a clinical trial using a compound for patients who have been confirmed to have long COVID and the underlying immune deficiencies to see if the compound that's effective in fibromyalgia could also potentially be effective in long COVID. And long COVID, as you may be aware, affect 20 to 25 million Americans. It's a disease that's never going to go away because the coronavirus, COVID-19, is never going to disappear in our lifetime. It's now part of the unfortunate afflictions that people can develop.
Dr. Bruce, tell us what are the most common misconceptions about fibromyalgia that you'd like to correct?
First of all, before I entered the scene and did research in fibromyalgia, as I said, it was described as a syndrome. It's only subjective presentation of myriad symptoms. And it was incorrectly assumed that it was a disease only of women, and those women supposedly were not neurotic, hypochondriacal, hysterical people. And it was something in their head that caused them to have these symptoms. And as a result, there remains too many people who still have this incorrect perception of fibromyalgia. We call these people fibroskeptics. Because of these fibroskeptics and because of the lack of appreciation of the breakthrough research that we have done, as I just said, at the University of Illinois and at the Mayo Clinic and at Stanford, there is a great deal of unhappiness in patients with fibromyalgia. As a matter of fact, the level of suicidal ideation and suicide in patients with fibromyalgia exceeds that of just plain mental depression. Why is that? Well, number one, way too many healthcare professionals and physicians refuse to accept that fibromyalgia is a real disease. Number two, until we developed and documented the fibromyalgia blood test, patients with this disease said, there's no way to diagnose us. So doctors don't believe in us. There's no objective way to prove that we have this disease. And then ultimately, there was a concept that you couldn't in any way reverse the disease or underlying processes of the disease. So how are you ever going to get better? Because the only drugs ever approved by the FDA for fibromyalgia are merely masking compounds. They mask the severity of your pain. They make you sleepy, so you're not as alert. And when you're not as alert, maybe you don't realize the depth and breadth of the manifestations of this disease. You don't realize how bad your brain fog is. You're coping with less pain because the pain is being masked by FDA-approved drugs or narcotics or opiates. So as a result, patients become very unhappy and depressed. And then when you look at these patients, they look perfectly healthy. So their friends, family, and most importantly, their spouses say, you look fine. I can't believe you're sick. So you're rejected by doctors, by the medical profession, and by family and friends. Of course, you're going to get depressed. Nobody believes in you, and nobody's offering you anything that can reverse the problems you're having. Well, we have changed that whole scenario. We have shown unequivocally and objectively that there is an accurate way to diagnose this through a simple blood test. We can answer the question of whether you have the disease in a matter of days. And as I just said, we've developed a compound that via a large clinical trial with hundreds of individuals proved effective in reducing and or eliminating the symptoms that are affiliated with fibromyalgia.
Could you describe what is a typical fibro flare feels like for those who never experience it?
Patients will all of a sudden have no energy, zero energy. That's number one. Number two, they can't mentally focus. There's mental confusion. They're having headaches. They're having memory lapses. They're having trouble communicating verbally and physically. They have terrible fatigue. They literally can't get out of bed. They have zero energy. They are anxious. They suffer with poor sleep. They have gastrointestinal upset, as I said before. It's been classified as an irritable bowel syndrome. And remember what I just said, syndrome, which means it's a collection of symptoms. Those are the problems that are occurring. But in our research, we found that there are immune system deficiencies. Much of the problems in this disease relate to a large part of the immune system in the colon called the microbiome. And as a result, the compound that we developed targets the microbiome to improve the health and well-being of a person. And the microbiome, as time has gone by, has proven to be important in a number of chronic illnesses.
Interesting indeed. Interesting. And Dr. Bruce, what will be your short-term and long-term goals as a researcher?
Well, my most important goal is to tell anybody who has been considered to have fibromyalgia or suffers with chronic pain or mental depression or chronic anxiety or poor sleep, to tell them your symptoms are part of a real disease process. Do not give up hope. You can contact us. As I already mentioned, we have the fibro test. It's offered by a laboratory that I do not own, so there's no economic interest in my recommendations, but please go to www.thefibrotest to learn about this. If you have questions, you can contact us. I'm always available to talk to patients and to their doctors and family members. I do it at zero cost because it's important for me to get the message out. Unfortunately, I have been criticized, not because our science is imperfect. To date, not one physician, not one scientist, not one organization has ever found a fault or an error in the blood test that can diagnose fibromyalgia. But there is economic interest for us to not succeed by certain parties. Companies, for example, that sell drugs that mask the symptoms. Individuals who benefit from having patients go through unrelated tests merely as an effort to tell the patient what they don't have. Those are called rule-out tests. Our testing, or the testing that's available, I should say, is called a rule-in test. It rules in if you have the disease. So you get an answer. And once you get that answer, you don't have to keep going back to the doctor over and over and over again. We can provide you with a accurate diagnosis and tell you that there is a pathway for a compound. It's called Imbix, IMBXX, that has been especially beneficial for patients with these manifestations. And you can learn about it at imbxx.com. I recommend that people watch the testimonials and read the testimonials. These are patients, individuals who are not paid, but who've been using Imbix and have had their life change. In our clinical trial, for example, we had a young woman who participated. She and her family came all the way from Italy to Southern California. She was on an antipsychotic medication. People thought she was crazy regarding her symptoms. And she decided that she would be willing to wean herself off that compound with the aid and approval of her personal physician, and at the same time take Imbix. And since then, she has not needed any prescription medications. She is on Imbix, and her symptoms have disappeared. And she was afflicted for most of her life. So there is hope. You can be assured that there is an objective way to get an accurate diagnosis, and that there is a pathway in an effort to hopefully lessen the manifestations of this condition. It's not a cure. Okay, we can't call it a treatment because it is not a prescription drug, but we have a compound that boosts the immune system health of the body. And as I've already said, fibromyalgia is an immune system medical disorder.
Dr. Bruce, before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people. My other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, and my book 101 review in fifth season too. Comedy 101 in second season, and my food 101 in fifth season as well. Geography 101 in fourth season, and my baby podcast Law 101 and mental health 101. Love letters in the third season, and movie 101 review and music 101 in fourth season and Science 101 and Sex 101 in its first season. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So, Mr. Bruce, what advice would you give to someone who just received a fibromyalgia diagnosis today?
First thing, how was the diagnosis reached? Was it based upon subjective medical complaints, or was it objectively proven through the diagnostic blood test, the fibro test? That's number one. If you were given the diagnosis and you want objective confirmation, I highly recommend consideration of undergoing the fibro test. That test, by the way, is covered by the vast majority of health plans. So in general, there's no out-of-pocket expense to get the test. And indeed, if the test is positive, you will be able to receive a no-cost 30-day supply of Imbix to try and see if this is helpful in benefiting your immune system health and making you feel better. So essentially, the old adage, getting two birds with one stone. Get the test. If it's positive, get the interventional compound to boost your immune system health. And if you have the proper insurance, it essentially could cost you nothing out of pocket. Think about that. A major chronic illness that affects millions of people that potentially can be answered and addressed without any out-of-pocket cost.
Indeed, people, Mr. or Dr. Bruce Gillis, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. Can you please invite our listeners to support your advocacy, your projects, or anything that you want to promote?
Just, I want to promote the health and well-being of these individuals. So as I said, you can go to www.thefibrotest.com and www.imbix.com. And from there, if you have any questions, there are contact information so you know how to get a hold of the entities that offer these testing and the Imbix supplement. And from there, if you have further questions, you can contact them. And if you need to talk to me individually or your doctors need to talk to me individually, I am available at no cost to do so.
Yes, people, let's support Dr. Bruce Gillis, because if you support him, for sure, more and more and more empowering breakthrough to come. So, Mr. Dr. Bruce, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lucas. I'm looking forward to helping your audience.
Yes, indeed. More to come, people. See you soon. Dr. Bruce, next week I'm gonna reach out for you.